Imagine waiting for something with all your heart, a prayer that you've lifted up day after day, a need you feel deep in your soul, a hope that keeps you awake at night. You find yourself asking God to move, pleading for an answer, longing for Him to show you the way. But sometimes, in His divine wisdom, God doesn't give us an answer right away. Instead, He asks us to wait, to be still, to trust that He hears us even when all we feel is silence. Waiting on God can be one of the most challenging aspects of our faith because it goes against everything in us that wants answers now, solutions today, and fulfillment in our timing. Yet, it's in this waiting that we come face to face with one of the most beautiful truths about God. He answers in His perfect timing, not a moment too soon, and not a moment too soon, and not a second too late. It's a timing that is not just good, but absolutely perfect because it's crafted by the one who knows all, sees all, and loves us more deeply than we can comprehend. Think about the difference between our view of time and God's view of time. We live in a world that moves fast, a world that prizes immediate results and quick fixes. But God operates on an eternal timeline. He isn't rushed by our schedules or constrained by our deadlines. He sees the end from the beginning, knowing exactly when and how to act in our lives for our ultimate good. In Isaiah 55:8-9, the Lord tells us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This verse is a powerful reminder that God's timing is not random. It's rooted in His higher perspective, His endless wisdom, and His boundless love for us. While we see only a tiny fragment of the picture, He sees it all. The past, the present, and the future. Every piece of the puzzle in its rightful place. But waiting can feel painful, can't it? When we're in the middle of it, we can begin to feel like maybe God has forgotten us, or maybe we did something wrong. We question, we worry, and sometimes we even doubt. But I want to encourage you to remember that waiting is not a sign of God's absence. It's a sign of His presence working in ways we may not yet see. Think about a farmer who plants seeds in the soil. For weeks or even months, he waits, not seeing anything happening above ground, but he trusts that beneath the surface, the seeds are growing, taking root and preparing for a harvest. In the same way, God is working in the hidden places of our lives, nurturing our faith, deepening our trust, and aligning circumstances in ways we cannot understand. Just because we cannot understand, just because we cannot see the growth, doesn't mean it isn't happening. God is cultivating something beautiful in us, and the waiting season is a part of His process. We also need to realize that sometimes our prayers are part of a bigger story than we understand. Maybe God is orchestrating events or changing hearts, including ours, before He brings the answer. Maybe He's preparing the right circumstances, building the right relationships, or setting up the right opportunities to bring us into a place of blessing that goes beyond what we could ever imagine. When we are waiting, God is still working, aligning every detail in His perfect order. Romans 8:28 assures us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This is not a promise that every answer will come immediately, but it is a promise that every answer will come at the right time and for our ultimate good. God isn't delaying to be unkind. He's delaying to be unkind. He's delaying to be generous, to give us something that far exceeds our expectations. So today, if you find yourself waiting, wondering, or maybe even feeling a little weary, take heart. God's timing is not a sign of indifference, but a mark of His perfect love for you. Each day you wait is a day He is using to build something in you, something that will prepare you for His answer. Remember that God's silence is not the absence of His love. It is a part of His loving process to shape us, grow us, and get us ready for what He has in store. Waiting is not wasted when it's in the hands of the Lord. Trust that He is good, that He hears every prayer, and that His answer will come in the moment that is best for you. His perfect moment when everything aligns according to His will. In the meantime, rest in the knowledge that you are held by the one who never fails, the one whose timing is flawless, the one who will answer in His perfect timing. When we're waiting for God's answer, it's natural to wonder why it hasn't come yet, to ask ourselves why we can't see what He's doing. But the truth is, God often withholds immediate answers because He's doing something far greater than we can comprehend. He is not only preparing an answer, He is preparing us for that answer. Sometimes, in our eagerness for a quick response, we overlook the fact that God isn't only focused on our present need. He's concerned with the transformation of our hearts, the deepening of our faith, and the strengthening of our relationship with Him. God's delay isn't a denial. It's a deliberate act of love, a divine strategy to shape us, to mold us, and to prepare us for the blessing He is bringing our way. He knows that if He were to answer immediately without preparing us, we might not be able to handle the answer fully. He sees what we need long before we do, and He understands exactly what must happen in our hearts for us to receive His answer in the way that will be most beneficial to us and to His kingdom. Imagine a master sculptor working on a beautiful piece of marble. He doesn't rush his work. He takes his time, chipping away with care, refining each detail with precision. He sees the potential of the masterpiece long before it's visible to anyone else. In the same way, God is working on us, sculpting our character, refining our desires, and aligning our hearts with His. Often the waiting period is when this transformation happens. God uses the waiting to reveal things within us that need to change, attitudes that need adjusting, or faith that needs strengthening. This is not a delay. It's an invitation to become more like Christ. He uses the time to draw us closer to Him, to build within us a deeper dependence on His presence, and to remind us that He is our true source of strength and peace. In the waiting, we learn to surrender our control, to place our trust in His wisdom rather than our own understanding, and to embrace a faith that doesn't waver based on circumstances, but is firmly rooted in who God is. And while God is working in us, He is also working around us. God's answers to our prayers often involve others, situations, and timing that reach far beyond our personal lives. He is orchestrating events, aligning people, and preparing opportunities that will bring about His purposes in ways we cannot imagine. Perhaps He is softening someone's heart, preparing them to be part of the answer. Perhaps He is setting the stage for an opportunity that will not only bless us, but also impact the lives of many others. Romans 8:28 assures us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This means that God's timing isn't just about us. It's about His kingdom, His plan, and His desire to use our lives as a testimony of His faithfulness. We may not see the full picture now, but we can be assured that He is weaving together every detail for our good and for His glory. In this time of waiting, God is also building resilience and endurance within us. He knows that the strength we gain during the wait will be essential for the journey ahead. Sometimes we think we're ready, but God knows we need to grow in patience, in faith, and in spiritual maturity. James 1:4 reminds us, "Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." God desires for us to be complete, to be fully equipped to handle what He has in store. This isn't about withholding blessings, but about ensuring that when we receive His answer, we are ready to embrace it, sustain it, and use it to fulfill the purpose He has set before us. God's perfect timing is not only about bringing the right answer. It's about making us the right vessels to receive it. So if you find yourself waiting, know that God is not idle. He is actively working on your behalf, shaping you, preparing you, and aligning circumstances in ways you may not see. Every day of waiting is a day He is using to build something beautiful within you, to make you a reflection of His love and a vessel of His grace. He is drawing you closer, teaching you to rely on His strength, and showing you that His timing is always worth the wait. This process may not be easy, but it is purposeful. You are not forgotten, and your prayers are not ignored. You are deeply loved by a God who is willing to delay so that He can give you not just a good answer, but His best answer. Trust in His perfect timing, knowing that when the answer comes, it will be worth every moment of waiting, for it will come wrapped in His love, His wisdom, and His divine purpose. Waiting on God requires patience and trust. Two qualities that are often difficult to cultivate in a world that pushes us toward instant gratification. But God uses seasons of waiting to build something powerful within us. Character, perseverance, and a faith that goes beyond what we can see or understand. Waiting isn't just a passive activity. It's an active stance of faith. It's standing firm in the belief that God's promises are true, even when the evidence around us hasn't yet caught up with that reality. James 1:4 tells us, "Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." In other words, the waiting isn't pointless. It's purposeful. God is doing a refining work within us, shaping us into people who can handle the blessings He has in store, people who aren't swayed by circumstances, who don't rely on emotions or fleeting desires, but who are grounded in a deep and abiding faith. This faith, forged in the fire of waiting, becomes a bedrock that sustains us through all seasons of life, not just the easy ones. Patience is not something that comes naturally to most of us. In fact, it's often in the waiting that we become acutely aware of our impatience, our tendency to worry, and our desire to control outcomes. Yet it's in these moments of discomfort that God invites us to let go, to surrender our timeline and our expectations, and to embrace His perfect timing. Imagine the patience of a gardener who plants seeds in the soil and waits, knowing that no amount of worry or rushing will make those plants grow faster. The gardener understands that growth happens in its own time, and that rushing the process will only harm the plant. In the same way, God, the ultimate gardener, is patiently nurturing us, knowing exactly when we're ready for the blessings we're praying for. He's not withholding to be cruel or to test us. He's waiting for the moment when our roots are strong enough, when our faith is deep enough to sustain the fullness of His answer. During the waiting, God often reveals to us aspects of His character that we might not see otherwise. We come to know Him not just as our provider or protector, but as the one who is intimately involved in every detail of our lives. who walks beside us, even when we feel alone, who listens to our every sigh and sees every tear. Waiting allows us to develop a relationship with God that isn't based on what He can give us, but on who He is. It shifts our focus from the gift to the giver, from the answer to the one who holds all answers. In our desperation for a solution, we often forget that the greatest gift is God Himself, His presence, His love, His unchanging faithfulness. As we wait, we learn to lean into Him, to rely on Him, and to discover that His presence is more than enough to sustain us, even when the answer hasn't yet come. This deepening relationship becomes a source of strength and peace, a wellspring that we can draw from in every season of life. Patience in waiting also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not the ones in control, that our lives are in the hands of a God who is infinitely wiser and more loving than we could ever be. Waiting humbles us because it shows us our own limitations, our inability to see the full picture, and our need for God's guidance. It calls us to acknowledge that our plans are often short-sighted, that what we think we need immediately might actually pale in comparison to what God is preparing for us. Humility allows us to say, Lord, your will, not mine. Your timing, not mine. Not mine. This humble surrender doesn't diminish us. It frees us. It frees us from the constant striving, the anxious questioning, the restless wondering, and brings us into a state of peace that can only come from trusting in God's sovereignty. As we embrace patience, we also cultivate hope. This isn't a hope based on wishful thinking or blind optimism, but a hope that is anchored in the promises of God. Romans 8:25 tells us, "But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently." Hope is the anchor that holds us steady in the waiting, reminding us that God's delays are not His denials, that every promise He has made is as certain as the sunrise. This hope keeps our eyes lifted, not on our circumstances, but on the one who is faithful. It fills our hearts with anticipation, knowing that God's answer, whenever it comes, will be worth the wait. Hope allows us to endure, to press on, and to trust that every moment of waiting is a moment in which God is actively working for our good, crafting a story of redemption, growth, and ultimate fulfillment. So if you find yourself in a season of waiting, I encourage you to let patience do its work within you. Don't rush the process or try to force an outcome. Instead, embrace this time as a gift, an opportunity to deepen your faith, to draw closer to God, and to allow Him to shape you into the person He created you to be. God's timing is never early, and it's never early, and it's always exactly right, aligned with His purpose and filled with His love. Each day of waiting is a day He is using to prepare you, to build a foundation within you that will support the blessings He has in store. Trust that as you wait, He is with you, that He sees your heart, that He hears your prayers, and that in His perfect timing, He will answer in a way that will bring Him glory and bring you joy beyond measure. As we wait on God's perfect timing, we learn something invaluable about faith. Waiting requires trust, and trust is the foundation of a deep, abiding relationship with God. It's one thing to trust God when answers come quickly, but when we are called to wait, sometimes for days, months, or even years, we find ourselves faced with a choice. Will we trust in His character, even when we cannot see His hand? This is where true faith is refined. where it is tested and purified. Trusting God in the waiting is an act of surrender, an intentional decision to believe that His plans are better than ours, that His wisdom surpasses our understanding, and that His love for us is unwavering. Proverbs 3, 5, 6 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. When we surrender our understanding, we open the door for God to work in ways beyond our comprehension, ways that reveal His power and His grace. This journey of waiting also teaches us that God's timing is deeply rooted in His love for us. If God delays, it is not to withhold good from us. Rather, it is to align our lives with His perfect purposes. Often, we think that what we desire must be right because we feel it so strongly, but God knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows the things we don't see, the circumstances, the relationships, the growth we still need to experience. In His loving wisdom, God holds back answers not to deny us, but to protect us, to shape us, and to prepare us. Think of a loving parent who doesn't give their child every desire immediately. They wait until the child is ready, until they are mature enough to handle it, knowing that timing is essential to truly appreciating and benefiting from the gift. In the same way, God waits until His timing is perfect, until we are prepared not only to receive His answer, but to thrive in it. His love guides His timing, and His timing reflects His perfect, boundless love. The waiting period is also a time for God to deepen our intimacy with Him. Sometimes we become so focused on the answers, on the breakthroughs, that we miss the opportunity to know God more deeply. But waiting strips away our distractions, our false securities, and reminds us that our hope is not in the blessings, but in the one who blesses. In the quiet moments of waiting, we are invited to draw closer to God, to rest in His presence, and to find that He is our true joy and strength. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." This is an invitation not to wait in frustration, but to wait in peace. To wait with the assurance that God's presence is with us, that His love is sustaining us, and that His wisdom is guiding every detail of our lives. In these moments of stillness, we find a deep, unshakable connection with God. A connection that reminds us that we are never alone, that He is always with us, and that His plans for us are infinitely better than anything we could imagine. And as we grow closer to God in this waiting season, something incredible happens. Our desires begin to change. The things we thought we wanted, the timelines we thought were essential, start to pale in comparison to the beauty of God's plan. Our hearts align with His. Our desires become shaped by His love. And we find ourselves praying, "Lord, not my will, but yours be done." This transformation of desire is a powerful work of grace. It shifts our perspective from self-centered expectations to a God-centered hope. We begin to see that what we need most isn't an immediate answer, but a deepened relationship with our Creator. A relationship with our Creator, a relationship that fills every corner of our hearts with His peace, His joy. We come to realize that the greatest answer to any prayer is more of God Himself, more of His presence, more of His guidance, and more of His love filling our lives. In the waiting, God not only prepares us to receive His answer, but also prepares us to become a blessing to others as we learn patience, as our faith grows, and as we draw closer to God. We become vessels of His grace. Our testimony becomes a source of encouragement to others who are also waiting, who are also longing for answers. When they see our faith, when they witness our peace in the waiting, they are reminded of God's faithfulness, of His perfect timing, and of the strength He provides. Our story becomes a living example of God's love and faithfulness, a reminder that He truly does work all things together for good. We find ourselves being able to comfort others with the comfort we have received, to encourage them with the hope that has sustained us, and to point them to the God who has never failed us. This, too, is part of God's perfect timing. The way He uses our journey to bless and uplift others, to extend His love through our lives. So if you are waiting on God today, know that you are not waiting in vain. You are in a season of preparation, a season where God is doing a work within you that is more profound and more beautiful than any answer you could have imagined. He is not only preparing a blessing for you, He is preparing you for that blessing. Trust in His timing, lean into His love, and let the waiting draw you closer to His heart. Let this season refine your faith, renew your hope, and reshape your desires until they align perfectly with His. And remember, God's delays are never a sign of His absence. They are a mark of His incredible love, His infinite wisdom, and His commitment to fulfilling His promises in a way that will bring you true joy and bring Him glory. In these seasons of waiting, we often don't realize that God is building something within us that we'll need in the future. His timing isn't just about the perfect moment for the answer. It's about shaping us into the people He's called us to be. The waiting is a sacred space where God cultivates qualities like resilience, endurance, and hope that aren't easily developed in seasons of ease. He uses this time to equip us, to refine us, to make us stronger in ways that only come through the patient process of waiting on Him. As we wait, we find ourselves being stretched and molded, learning to depend on God in ways we never would have if the answer had come immediately. It's as if He's preparing us for a greater purpose, one that we can't yet see, but one that He's orchestrating with perfect precision. We may be asking for something specific, but God's vision is far wider, His plan far greater, and His work within us far deeper than we could ever comprehend. Consider how many stories in Scripture reveal the importance of waiting. Think about Joseph, who waited in prison for years, or David, who was anointed king but had to wait for God's timing to take the throne. Think about Abraham and Sarah, who waited decades for the promise of a child, and how each of these individuals was profoundly shaped by the waiting. These weren't wasted years. They were years where God was preparing them, teaching them, and transforming them. Waiting in God's timing often includes a deeper purpose, a preparation that we might not fully understand until we reach the other side. But in each of these stories, we see how God's perfect timing wasn't just about the right moment to fulfill a promise. It was about preparing the person to carry that promise. God used the waiting to cultivate a faith that would endure, a hope that would not waver, and a dependence on Him that would sustain them in their calling. And this same pattern is true for us. The waiting refines our character, it tests our resolve, and it deepens our relationship with God. In this time, God is not only preparing the answer, He is preparing us to steward that answer wisely, to hold it with humility, and to use it for His glory. Sometimes the blessings we long for are greater than we can currently handle. If given too soon, we might misuse them or take them for granted. But when we allow God to prepare us through the waiting, we become people who can fully appreciate and steward His gifts in a way that honors Him. Our hearts are softened, our pride is humbled, and our priorities are aligned with His. We begin to see the waiting not as a barrier, but as a bridge carrying us from where we are to where God intends us to be. This period of waiting also teaches us a profound trust in God's goodness. It's easy to trust God when things are going our way, but when answers are delayed, we're given the opportunity to trust Him purely for who He is. It's in these seasons that we learn to say, Lord, even if I don't understand, I trust You. Even if I don't see the answer yet, I know You are good. This is a trust that isn't based on circumstances, but is rooted deeply in the character of God. It's a trust that acknowledges His sovereignty, that rests in His wisdom, and that believes His timing is perfect even when we can't see the bigger picture. This kind of trust doesn't come easily. It's built through the quiet moments of waiting, through the prayers lifted up in faith, and through the surrender of our own understanding to God's greater plan. As we grow in this trust, our perspective begins to shift. We start to see the waiting as part of God's answer, as a time when He is drawing us closer, teaching us, and revealing more of His heart. We begin to understand that God's timing is not a delay, but a demonstration of His love. Each day that we wait is a day that He is working in ways we cannot see, orchestrating the details of our lives with precision and purpose. And one day, when the answer finally comes, we will look back and see how beautifully He has woven everything together. We will see that His timing was indeed perfect, that His ways were higher, and that every moment of waiting was filled with His loving presence. So let us embrace the waiting, not with frustration or doubt, but with faith and expectation. Let us allow God to work within us, to shape us, and to prepare us for the blessings He has in store. Let us remember that His timing is not just about the answer. It's about His work in us. And as we wait, may we be reminded that God is never late, that His timing is flawless, and that His love is guiding every step. Waiting may not be easy, but when we trust in His perfect timing, we find that it is always worth it. And in the end, we will see that the waiting itself was a blessing, a gift that drew us closer to the heart of God and prepared us for all that He has planned. As we come to the close of this journey on waiting for God's perfect timing, I invite you to consider this truth deeply. God is never late, never early, but always right on time. He knows exactly what we need, when we need it, and how to bring it into our lives in a way that will bring us the greatest joy and Him the greatest glory. Waiting isn't wasted time. It's sacred time. It's a time when God is working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, preparing hearts, and deepening our faith so that when His answer arrives, we are ready to receive it with a heart full of gratitude and a spirit full of humility. Waiting on God teaches us something invaluable about trust, something that goes beyond simply hoping for an answer. It teaches us to rest in the certainty of His love, to be confident that He is at work, even when we can't see it, and to know that the one who began a good work in us will be faithful to complete it. So I encourage you today, if you find yourself in a season of waiting, don't rush it. Don't try to force an answer before it's time. Don't let doubt and frustration cloud your vision, but instead lean fully into the presence of God. Seek Him not just for the answer, but for the closeness that only comes through seasons of waiting. Open your heart to what He may want to teach you, the areas He may want to refine, the strength He may want to refine, the strength He may want to build in you. Embrace this time as a gift as an invitation to grow closer to Him, to deepen your faith, and to let go of your own plans in exchange for His. Know that the waiting itself is part of His answer, that He is using every moment to prepare you, not just for what's coming, but for a deeper, more intimate relationship with Him. Trust that His timing is perfect, that His plans for you are good, and that He will not withhold any blessing that is meant for you. Let this be your prayer. Lord, I trust your timing. I surrender my desires, my anxieties, my need for control. I place everything in your hands, believing that you know what is best for me. Help me to wait with faith, to rest in your promises, and to draw closer to you each day. This is a prayer of surrender, a prayer that releases our grip on the things we hold too tightly and instead holds fast to the truth of God's love and faithfulness. And as you wait, remember that God is with you. His presence is beside you. His grace is sufficient for you, and His love surrounds you. You are not alone in the waiting. He is guiding you, comforting you, and sustaining you every step of the way. Imagine the impact of this trust on your life. When we live with a deep assurance of God's timing, we find peace in situations that would otherwise cause anxiety. We find joy in the midst of uncertainty, hope in times of delay, and confidence that we're held securely in His hands. This kind of faith not only changes us, but it becomes a testimony to those around us. Others see the peace that flows from our trust in God, the patience that comes from knowing He is in control, and the strength that endures through trials. Our lives become a beacon of hope, a witness to the power of trusting in God's timing, a living example of His love and faithfulness. Through our story, others are encouraged to place their own trust in Him, to wait with hope, and to believe that God is working all things together for good. So let this waiting season be one that strengthens you, that fills you with God's peace, and that draws you closer to the one who loves you beyond measure. Live each day with an expectant heart, knowing that God's timing is always perfect and that His plans are always good. And when the answer finally comes, you will see how every moment of waiting was worth it, how every delay was a part of His design, and how His timing was indeed flawless. You will look back and see the beauty of His work in your life, the depth of His love, and the wisdom of His plan. Trust in God's perfect timing. Surrender your heart fully to Him and let Him guide your steps, knowing that the one who holds the stars in place is holding your life in His hands, and He will never let you go. Amen.